planning for work in office, work from home, a lot of interior design work has been happening for a very long time. It isn't just because of COVID, it isn't just because of anything. We've always been looking at things. But what has happened over the last, let's just say, a few years? Well, simply put, if you look at a lot of your offices right now, a lot of unoccupied desks. And that's a true point. And we are also looking at occupancy levels falling. So what does this mean after the pandemic? Well, the whole nature of work has somewhat changed. What do you do at work? How do you do it? Do you do it better at home? A lot of questions got raised when more than all of the population in the world were all working from home during COVID. So the journey that DBS took was a lot longer than just because of COVID we had reactions to it. We actually made a lot of inroads into figuring out how workplace could actually be different for our employees. When we were setting up our ambition to be the best bank for a better world, Piyush had always figured that, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So what are the enablers in culture, apart from HR, that can actually drive culture in the bank? And we always thought that if I linked the work that I do in corporate real estate and workplace, can I link that to the overall overarching vision of the company? And if you look alongside these two statements, they are somewhat the same. And the point is, the work that we do in workplace has a far-reaching impact than just, hey, like I said, how many desks do you have? So we have ability to actually drive people into the office. And we started working on this plan way back in 2015 and 2016. So we went from a lot of offices like this. I'm sure some of you knew we were in DBS Tower 1, many, many years in Shenton Way, and we moved to MBFC. And MBFC kind of looks like this. I'm sure some of you still have offices like that. But we transformed them into this. So why did we do this? Is it just because I like surfboards? Yeah, I don't surf anyway, but we did this because we knew that we had to write a recipe to see how we can actually transform the culture of the bank using space. And how did it start? It wasn't just, it wasn't just, hey, let's get a couple of interior designers in the room, think about what is a nice, wacky design. Actually, the heart of how Joyspaces are is actually about the employees and the people that are working in it. And we wanted to really figure out how we could use this as a tool to transform the workplace from within. Around this time, this was coined, around 2016, we were trying to be the world's best digital bank. And I remember speaking to Piyush, and I said, hey, Piyush, you want to be startup, 20-something thousand at that time. But our office looked like factory. It isn't very exciting. At the time, Google was putting slides in their offices. So I said, hey, we have a challenge to try to ignite this workforce if they really want to be like a startup, like a tech startup. And he said, okay, Erwin, fine, but I have one problem, one thing that you cannot do. I don't like people sharing desks. So you cannot share. Okay, so everybody has their desk. I said, what about wastage, what about utilization? He said, you go figure that out. But I don't want my employees to lose a sense of belonging to the company. And a desk is a symbolic point of saying that, hey, I've given you a place to sit and therefore you belong to my company. So with that problem statement in mind, we embarked on the journey. We had to try to figure out how do you feel when you lose a desk? How do you feel when I ask you to share even if I was not supposed to ask you to share? What are the things that change and that your mindset, the behaviors that you need to do? How do I bring you along the journey to design the space for us? So Joyspace was formed on those bases. And I want to show you now the picture of the very, very first Joyspace way back in 2016. This is how it started. So you can recognize me. I was a little bit pudgier then, but most of my teammates are still there. So what did we do? We started with a very simple experiment. We put everybody in a meeting table right in the middle of the open office space. And we said to each other, let's experiment. We can change one thing every week. So when we got to this big open desk, we felt that is you can see there isn't much desk. We all had our cables, we all had our laptops, and we were in very close proximity to each other. We gave up our storage. We had to learn to live next to a person who probably rocks the chair or rocks the table, or sometimes speak too loudly whilst you're on a conference call. And we figured out over time that if you come in close proximity where you start to share space, people also don't take care of the space themselves. But one thing changed as well. I got a lot closer to my teammates. We didn't write emails to each other anymore because what's the point? He's next to you. I also overheard many conversations which I intervened just before something big happens. So the whole journey of understanding how space changes behavior is really where a lot of these experiments moved on to. And we then scaled up. We scaled up from one table to multiple tables. And we did this with my own team. We experimented on ourselves first. And then when we scale and scale and scale, we finally launched the first Joyspace. So rather than hearing me talk about it, let me play you a video so that you can understand what did we do.
Ever wondered what the DBS office looks like? Let us show you how we've taken traditional work areas and transformed it to what we call our DBS Joyspaces.
It all began with a game-changing question. How could we redesign our workspaces so that our employees can step in and unleash their full potential?
It may seem like a simple question, but it was no easy feat.
With a whirlwind of experimentation and research,
The answer became clear. Let's forgo the typical office setups. Turn our colleagues into co-creators of their workspace through the power of choice. To foster a vibrant community and a dynamic culture of being the best bang for a better world. Because let's face it, when your surroundings are highly visual and optimized, you feel and think better, right?
So we ventured far, far away, beyond our desks, all the way to other people's desks.
Can I help you?
And immersed ourselves in the many, many departments that exist in DBS to ask them one simple question.
What kind of workspace do you need to perform at your best?
Beyond informal quizzes at the pantry and each other's tables, we held team workshops, shadowed our colleagues, sent out surveys, did countless interviews.
We waited for the data to pour in. Here are some of the answers we got.
Can we have more standing tables?
How about a place to get creative and brainstorm?
Maybe even somewhere to relax?
Sure, why not? And thus began the revamp of our office.
What we found interesting was that departments were craving a bit of personal touch.
So we handed them the reins to actually choose their theme and design for their own departments.
Yes, we seriously have Jedi bankers in our office. May the force be with us, truly.
And no, we're not in the Copacabana. It's still our office. We take every suggestion seriously, even if it means bringing the 4 seasons into our office all year round.
So are these really offices?
Yes, but here at DBS, we prefer to call them our Joyspaces.
We also began knocking down walls.
Well, no, not literally. But with no fixed sitting, we gave our employees the freedom to choose where and how they work. Swing by our breakout zones for some spontaneous group discussions.
Or the ideation rooms for a little creative boost, where the furniture can be moved and the senses awakened for your ultimate brainstorming sessions.
A quick dose of Shakespeare? How about some lunchtime meditation? Or a little shut-eye in our resting pods?
With hybrid work here to stay, we've added features like RFID lockers and also meeting pods, so that people can focus.
Our carpets are made from recycled fishing nets, so every step we take is towards a greener future. Quite literally.
And as the future of work evolves, so will we, as we continue to reimagine our office and make work more enjoyable for our colleagues. Because that's what our Joyspaces are all about.
So that's the pretty picture behind what started as just a humble workstation where we all sat very close to each other. So what you see is the fleshed up product after almost, from 2016 to 2023, that's almost 8 years worth of experiments that we go and pour in year on year to drive culture in the bank. But I wanted to tell you a little bit of a story of what goes behind such experiments. Why do we even bother, to be really honest? Well, the truth is the workspace that we have will change according to how the working is going to be done in it. And I think the MC talked a little bit about work from home, work in office, and the conundrum that's there. All right, so I'm sure some of you face this at work in HR and all, and obviously, hey, I don't want to come in, it's easier, I can stay home, I'm more productive the minute I turn on my computer, I can be in my shorts, which is nice. But a lot of our CEOs want everybody to come back. Everybody needs to be here. I want to cultivate productivity. Can I actually ensure that by you being in the office, you're actually doing work? So the problem with hybrid is actually it's not simple to solve. But the basic problem is, I like to look at it like a seesaw. Hybrid is a balance. One side is employee, another side is the management. The other side is also flexibility, convenience, but it's also about culture, productivity, coming together as a team to do the right thing. You can also put teamwork versus individual work on either side of the seesaw. So to me, hybrid and the ability to blend and manage that is all about how you can properly balance the seesaw. So hybrid and synchronicity is the fulcrum that's right in the middle of the challenges that we all face universally about working home and work in the office. And the problem is some of us have crazy things, just like DBS, where we say 60% in the office, 40% at home. The fulcrum is not exactly in the middle. So how do you change this? Well, my job in Workspace is obviously trying to make sure more people are happy to do the right things in the office. But if they can choose to do the right things at home and be productive, then let them do that. But when they come in, do they do the same thing? Do they do the right thing? You have to change those spaces to allow that to happen. And so, before we actually even got out of COVID, we knew we had to do this. Continue that whole journey of experimenting, figuring out how our employees will likely work when they are in the office, even when we were in the middle of COVID. So, in 2021, when we were all at home, we ran a series of virtual workshops and went around the region. We asked a lot of our colleagues, understood what was the point, and why did we do it during COVID? A lot of people say, hey, the data not relevant because they're not in the office. Well, the truth of the matter is that was the only time you could get true information on the flip side of not coming to office. How productive do you feel when you are actually at home? And so we heard many things, right? Of course, they all like the shots. They like the fact they didn't have to commute. And of course, we saw the virus out there. But on the flip side, the company was also grappling with hybrid working, VC calls, Zoom, and then the usual, hello, can you unmute now? And during that time, the amount of stress that a lot of our employees faced was actually quite hard. They were trying to balance being able to still run a company whilst actually never meeting anybody. And I'm really sure in HR, you all had the same problem where, hey, new employee doesn't even know anything about the culture. So with all of those problems, we came up with some findings from the research and also what we were intending to experiment on. So the first one was about in-person interactions. Every time we spoke to people, they said, I miss my colleagues. I miss my friend. I don't have a connection whether he's happy, not happy. And even though we are on calls, I don't really know whether he's listening to me. So the interactions that you have in the office actually transcends down to a social paradigm. And one of the biggest challenges was about collaboration. How do you collaborate effectively over Zoom? I'm sure some of you have tried. It is not exactly very easy. So when you have to do certain things in the office, coming together needs to be of a certain purpose. Don't just come in to do individual work, please. Come in because you need to speak to your colleagues. So we knew this was an ask during the time COVID was happening. The second one I just kind of said about social connections. How important are they? They are more important than you think. And one of the things that we found out when we were looking at social connections, our employees actually said they feel more productive if they met somebody outside of their actual team. Now that's an interesting point. Why would you say that? The third one is we were struggling with the fact that everybody had a cat under their desk, maybe when they're working from home, and they could always sneak in the 10-minute yoga that they always had at home. And we said, well, when you come to office, you could also do the same. But when we were grappling with this, a lot of them say, hey, Erwin, if you're going to put the yoga place, don't do on my floor. Then we're like, why? Is there what? No. You put another floor. Why? Because my boss, not on the floor. Oh, that's interesting. So we found a lot of funny things as we experimented and quizzed and asked our employees. And when we realized those insights, we started to realize there are many, many things that we could change in the workplace, even in this current Joyspace setting. So a few examples. We created dedicated brainstorming rooms. And the brainstorming rooms are created in a very specific way using behavioral science. We didn't just come up with it. So we kind of A/B tested. We had brainstorming in normal meeting rooms. We had brainstorming in these ideation rooms. And in these ideation rooms, we filled it with funny things. Movable furniture, spray scents that you spray, you actually could get better brainstorming, we think. And lights and sounds and funny things that excite you as you come in to brainstorm. And we found an uplift of more than 20, sometimes even 30% increase in the total number of ideas generated in an ideation room setting versus not. Now, you might think, oh, just because it's a brand new thing, people decided to ideate some more. Actually, the answer is actually very simple. One of the key elements of the ideation room is to shock the person when he comes into the room. So you saw at the very beginning, my first opening slide, you saw this tunnel of lights. Those tunnel of lights actually makes you go, hey, wow, what like that? Then you enter into the room. What happens then? Most of the time, when you are going from meeting to meeting, you're always preoccupied with your own thoughts, right? You're on your mobile phone, you're texting your boss, you're worried about the next email. The minute you go to the ideation room, you go like that. What happens? You get distracted for that just 10 seconds, 5 seconds. And then when you go in, the facilitator say, come, let's all ideate together. You have forgotten the previous thing. And one of the other things in the ideation room was movable furniture. We encourage our facilitators not to set up the room so that you guys, when you go in, you're actually setting up the room because, again, what is the point? You distract the person from working on his laptop. So it's very simple things, simple nudges that we found in behavioral science that we added into those rooms as an example. Now let me move on. This whole thing about resting, and like I said, everybody felt that they didn't want to be in the same space where their boss is. So we actually did that. So the the wellness spaces are not on the floors. And we did find a very interesting correlation where we put it on a higher floor, all the people in the low zone actually uses that space. But actually when you go into these spaces, you will find multiple funny things. We thought that people would sit there and just meditate by themselves. But actually no. One of the funny things that we found as we ran the experiment was that when people come to this space where it's serene, it's like a spa-like environment, what happens? Employees are actually able to open up and talk to each other, especially manager to subordinate. And one special area we created had a tatami mat where it's on the floor, and you had to take off your shoes to go in. And you sit on the floor with your boss. What happens? You break down the hierarchy. You make the conversation intimate. You could be actually having a very caring coaching conversation with that employee. And the last thing we thought, which is also found in other research, is about creating social spaces that allow our employees to connect to each other, especially what we call the second degree or third degree connections that you have. And what we found was that actually by creating collision spaces, we created a huge cafeteria in MBFC. If nothing else, just for people to have good food and also a discounted price. But on top of that, it becomes a general point. We worked out in research that after around the 6th visit to a destination place with a collision capability, you will end up meeting somebody that you want to talk to on a project or on a water cooler requirement, or just to have a chat on somebody that you haven't met. So why am I telling you all this? I just want to say we are not just a bunch of interior designers. We don't just go around, okay, I like a light, I like to put a nice furniture. It goes a lot deeper than that. And I would challenge each one of you in your own organizations, especially all my HR colleagues down here, HR is a pivotal part of what we do. Part of my own vision statement, as you mentioned, is that I am not just building real estate for real estate's sake. I'm actually building it for the employees that sit in there. And my value proposition is not about how cheap the real estate is only. My value proposition is to make sure that your employees are obsessed with coming to work productively in an office and happy to do so. So that's the whole point. That's the whole holy grail of working together with HR, tech, and myself. We just want to do this. And over the years, our employee experience and our employee scores have kept on going up. And we are really proud because it is not just my effort, it's the effort I do with my HR and tech colleagues coming together to build a well-connected, beautiful, vibrant office that hopefully everybody goes home with a bit of a smile. And so the idea here is to keep on pushing this paradigm. We are not alone in trying to balance the right thing to do with workforce that is now very distributed. But you have to ask yourselves, why come to the office and what is important? Well, the truth of the matter is that if you can keep going, you will build the culture of any company in any space. So, key takeaways, straightforward. Use behavioral science. Really go deep and understand why people do what they do. All right? Involve them. Joyspaces are based on a co-created, co-managed manner of doing it, which is point number 4. The third one is just do a lot of experiments. Small ones, big ones, keep on experimenting, but experiment with the correct way of measuring. Don't just experiment blindly. I have one last tip. Just because he works for Google or Apple or Facebook doesn't mean the slide, the funny thing that they put in or a bulletin board is what you need to put in your office. You can obviously viciously copy whatever we do in DBS as well. But if it doesn't work for your company and you're not employee obsessed, you don't understand why they need it, then don't build it. Because it will be the biggest white elephant that you one day get rid of. So, I end here. I do have some time for questions, but I thank all of you for listening to me, and I hope this was an enjoyable session as you watch for me being up here. Thank you. I was told there's a catch box. I have 3 minutes left. Anybody has a burning question?
Thank you. I'm from Russia, and we have a big bank which tries to make their working spaces look like Google, but they failed. And they failed because of the working space alone doesn't do any change. You have to do something else. So what I've noticed is that the process of changing the working place is much more important than the working place itself. So how do you see the impact that the process itself made for the people and the working spaces made? So
that's a really, really good question. So if you didn't catch the question, it seems like I'm talking about the process rather than the end state of what the office is. And you are absolutely right. So what is the secret ingredient? Co-creation. Why? Very simple. If you have to renovate your own house, most of the time, you all will get involved with the interior designer. I want this, I want that, I want color, I want Zen. You will get involved, am I right? Very unlikely you will tell the designer you come up with your own thing, then I will go and sit in the house, correct? And that same psyche is the same in offices. People have all tailored different requirements. But the point is, obviously, you can't just give in to every single person, so you need to do it on a team base. But the process of co-creation is a very powerful one. Because why? You get buy-in right in the middle of before anything gets built. And when you use this as a change tool, and not necessarily just as a real estate project, you will get a lot more benefits. And I can tell you, in a lot of our process, Joyspaces, we don't just talk about the space. We talk about why you need this, why you work in this way, and sometimes even ignite change by saying, how come you're still using so much paper, or how come you're still not embracing the future of work with technologies and tools and things like that. So you're absolutely right. Whatever you come up with doesn't have to look like Google, but whatever you do during the process is more important, and the learnings from there transfer from one to another is actually what can drive change. Any 1 minute more? Or you want me to sing? One more there. You want to throw it?
Yeah. Can you catch? Can you catch?
Oh.
What is this? Okay.
Yeah, speak, yeah.
All right. Is there a frequency in which you have to refresh those
Oh, okay.
physical real estate?
Right.
Because sometimes you will just get desensitized. It doesn't trigger more thoughts, doesn't energize you anymore.
Okay. So if my finance partner was here in the room, he said, make sure it's depreciated already, then you can start again. Okay. That's around 5 years, just so you know. Okay. Is there a frequency? Well, the truth is actually, you are right. Is it one time you build, then 10 years later, you only go back and change it? Well, unfortunately, because you have to balance money and capital, that unfortunately is probably what has to be happen for a lot of CRE people like me. So what's the trick to get out of this? The trick is this: make the spaces and the things that you buy modular and fast and efficient and easy to change. So like I can give you an example. I have gone away from trying to build lots of meeting rooms. Because meeting rooms are very big, they are up to the ceiling. I have to change lights, aircon, sprinklers, just to move it from one place to another. So we've moved to big, huge meeting pods that can sit 4 people that doesn't have an aircon connection nor sprinklers. So therefore, if I buy that and I move it, I ROI it already. So the answer to your question, when things don't work out, hopefully you are able to use modularity, changeability to also change out what you don't want or don't need. More importantly, try not to waste, obviously, because the more you do new, then you change, then the sustainability element gets lost as well. So that's my last tip to you. I'm out of time because it's buzzing red, so I assume that's all I have. Very, very thankful for all of your questions and also for listening to me. Thank you so much.